Hello, I'm Jenny, a 27-year-old woman who just got divorced. I met my husband Jake at college when I was in my freshman year, and he was in his sophomore year. I knew from the time that I met him that he was going to be the one for me. After graduating, we focused on our careers and worked hard to save a lot of money so we could buy a good place to live in. By the time we got married, we had been dating for 7 years. Right after we got married, we purchased our own apartment and decided to start trying for a baby. But after months of trying, we did some tests and got told that I was infertile. I was devastated and inconsolable for a long time, but Jake had been my rock at that time. Jake's sister-in-law had also come over a lot to comfort me, and I did find some comfort in her too. Those were a tough few months for me to grapple with my new reality. But eventually, Jake and I began to see the pros of not having kids, like being able to spend twice the money on ourselves. About 2 years into Jake and I being married, we decided to be the ones to host for the holidays. My parents were on a cruise someplace, so it was Jake's family that joined us. Jake's parents were only stopping in town for a day because they were going on a road trip with some of their friends. They planned to stay the night at a motel so they could leave in the early hours of dawn without disturbing anyone. That only left Jake's brother Keith and his family, which included his wife Paula and his 4 kids. When Jake and I started dating, Keith and Paula had 2 kids from what Jake had told me. They were struggling back then as well. Keith wasn't working in a good enough job to support all of them, and Paula was adamant about being a stay-at-home mom. It was beyond me why they had 2 more children when they were struggling with the 2 they already had, but I digress. Anyway, that holiday, they asked us if they could stay with us for a week. "Guys, we need to ask you about something." "Yeah, what is it? Is everything fine?" Yeah, we just wanted to ask if we could have a tiny staycation at your place with the kids." "Staycation? Yeah, you're hosting the holidays, and we were wondering if we could spend the entire week here until the 2nd. "We can't afford an actual vacation, and this would be some form of it for the kids." "I don't know about that. Our apartment isn't very kid-friendly. We have a lot of expensive or even just fragile things that the kids could break." "I'm sure you could manage for just a week, Jenny." "Yeah, please, for the kids' sake." "Come on, Jenny, please just help out my family this once." "Fine, but I am warning you that if anything gets broken or damaged by your kids, I expect you to compensate me for it." "Yes, of course, I promise that we'll make sure the kids are well behaved." I wasn't too keen on allowing the kids in our home because I did have a lot of collections and other oddities hanging on walls or on shelves that were worth quite the buck. I had no other place to keep them away, because every room in our house would go towards giving Keith and his family a place to stay. I felt really pressured into giving up the space that I considered comfort, because Paula and Jake kept glaring at me while Keith looked at me like he was about to cry in desperation. I felt both intimidated and bad, so I gave in. Of course, my hesitation made Jake really upset with me. When Keith and Paula left our place that evening, Jake began lashing out at me for not helping the family. He asked me over and over again how I could be so heartless and value material things over family. He didn't even let me get a word in. He didn't speak to me for the next 2 days, and even though I was sure that I wasn't wrong to have concerns, I decided to put my own feelings aside and apologize, which Jake accepted and promised me that the holidays would be a wonderful time for us. When the holidays came around, it was a nightmare. The kids were a nightmare to deal with. Keith and Paula conveniently disregarded all their responsibilities and shoved them onto us, or me to be more specific, because Jake spent most of his time with Keith and Paula. Her kids were very undisciplined and very, very ruckus. They loved to destroy everything around them, and it was only a miracle that they didn't hurt themselves. I tried to get one of the other adults present to help with the kids, but they would always conveniently have some other plan to do at the moment. The only time I had true free time was on Christmas, when Jake's parents looked after the kids for a couple of hours. By the time it was New Year's, I was exhausted and ready for them to go back home. It was probably the exhaustion that led to me having an outburst that was bigger than I meant for it to be. What happened was that all the adults were napping while I was tending to the kids as usual. I was changing the diapers of the littlest one when I turned away for a couple of minutes to use the washroom so I could wash my hands. In those few minutes, the other 3 kids went out into the living room and decided to climb onto the showcase that housed a good amount of my trinkets and also functioned as a stand for our TV. Well, to get better grips on the shelves, they decided to throw a bunch of the trinkets on it away, and one of them picked up one of the trinkets and began hitting the TV with it, which damaged the TV screen. When I heard the commotion and rushed into the living room, I was greeted by this huge mess. Of course, the commotion had been loud enough to wake everyone up. The sight of the mess and all of the damage made me lose it. That is it! Whoa, calm down, Jen. It's just a little mess. No, it's not a little mess. They've destroyed everything. I turn around for just a few minutes and everything is ruined. Don't be a drama queen, Jenny. They're just kids. You're right. They're just kids. They can't be blamed, but you can. You are a horrible parent. So is Keith. How dare you? Ever since you got here, I have not had a day of rest. I've been the one looking after them because none of you care to. They're not disciplined at all, and they love to break things. I told you that this would be an issue, and now you have to pay for it. Wow. With the way you're complaining about kids, I'm happy you're infertile. No woman like you should ever deserve to be a mother. Get out. Take your kids and get out. I was hurt and upset. How could Paula say that to me after she knew how sensitive that topic was? Not to mention, that was a really cruel thing to say. Once again, Jake got angry at me, but I didn't care. I was right, and he knew it. He could have helped me out with the kids, but he chose not to either. We didn't speak for a couple of days, and I chose to spend New Year's with my best friend, Thea, who was very sympathetic to my situation. Jake and I eventually sorted things out, that I did make it very clear to him that I expected to be compensated for the damage, because aside from the TV, a lot of the trinkets were antique ones. I also told Jake that I never wanted to see or hear from Paula ever again. He begrudgingly agreed, but only because he knew I was right. The total damage costs came to around $2,000, and I decided to have them only pay half of it, considering their struggles. And then a couple of months later, Jake told me that he had something to tell me. So, Keith called me today. Oh, that's nice. What did he say? Turns out he got this huge promotion. That's great for him. Guess they won't be struggling anymore, huh? I'm happy for them. Yeah, but he'll be moving to another state and it's way too expensive to move the whole family there. He asked if Paula and the kids could move in with us. No! I don't see why Paula can't handle the kids herself. Or, now that Keith will be earning more, they can hire a nanny to help her look after the kids. Come on, Jenny, don't be so mean. You know what happened the last time they stayed over for the holidays. I will not let that nuisance back into my home. It's not just your home, it's mine too. This is my family. I'm sorry you're too heartless to care about family, but I'm not that way. If you have such a giving heart, why don't you help them hire a nanny? Or better yet, why don't you go over and help her raise her children? Wow, you really don't care about how much Paula will struggle. Not after she made fun of me for infertility, I don't. You know what? You're too upset right now. We'll talk about this tomorrow. Good night. I couldn't believe Jake's audacity. He knew just how I felt about Paula and her kids coming over, especially after last time, but he still chose to ask me and insult me in the process too. Of course I cared about family, but that's a sentiment that should go both ways. I cared about his family, but they never seemed to care about me. I didn't see why I should have done more than they would have done for me. The next morning, we were back on the discussion, and I firmly told him no over and over again. I suggested alternatives to helping them too, like me sponsoring a nanny, or even us going over on the weekends and looking after the kids so Paula could have some time off. But he shot those down too. Every time I told him that Paula and the kids were not allowed in our home, he would get more and more frustrated. He used every tactic possible, emotional blackmailing, yelling at me, threatening to leave me, you name it, he tried it. I didn't budge. That was a hill I was willing to die on. This argument lasted a good week before suddenly Jake was acting all normal. That made me very suspicious, of course. He was very distant, but he no longer seemed agitated with me, nor did he try to ask me again to let Paula and her kids move in. After a week of constantly asking me and pestering me, this made alarm bells go off in my head. I decided to do a little snooping around. I waited until Jake had fallen asleep to take his phone and go through it. Yes, I know it's wrong, but when you have this intense gut feeling that something's wrong, you just want to check up on it. And that's what I did. I first went through his chats with his brother, and I saw one message from Keith that said, "Thanks for helping Paula and the kids." That immediately confirmed my suspicions that something was happening behind my back. I went through his chats with Paula and then found out that he had gone behind my back and told Paula that she and her kids could come and live with us. He also told her that he planned to give her my room because I was the one who didn't want to help her, so having to give up my room would teach me a lesson. I was furious. Jake and I each had our own rooms. They were rooms that we filled with things that both of us enjoyed individually. Mine also acted as my office on days that I worked from home. So giving up my room also meant giving up all forms of privacy. While a part of me wanted to wake him up right then and there and yell at him for going behind my back and villainizing me, the sane and rational part of me knew that it would lead to nowhere. I would be the one who would get hurt while Jake would continue to live well. I knew at that moment that I had the upper hand and I was going to play my cards right. According to Jake's text with Paula, she was set to move in 2 weeks, so that gave me 2 weeks to move out beforehand. The first thing I did the next morning was to book a storage room where I could store all the furniture. Yes, all the furniture. You see, after Jake and I got married, we purchased a pretty big apartment. We had more than enough money after saving for years together, and it was our dream apartment. However, after we purchased it, we obviously needed to furnish it, but Jake decided that he didn't want to do that immediately. He wanted to do it after another 6 months. Keep in mind that all we had with us was a mattress, no bed frame, some utensils, and our personal things. Jake said he was tired of constantly not having any money to spend from saving so much for years. I understood his issue back then, so I let him have it his way. 8 months passed and my home was bare as it was on the first day we moved in, save for the few trinkets I bought here and there. Whenever I brought up buying the furniture, Jake would get all moody and upset with me. So I took matters into my own hands and bought everything myself. He didn't spend a dime on anything. From sofas to bed frames and bookshelves to even mirrors, he didn't pay a cent. I was going to remove everything. The only things he paid for existed in his room, so I let that be. The next thing I did was contact my best friend, Thea, and ask her if I could stay over for a rather long period. "Hey, how's it going?" "Not that great." "Oh no, what's wrong?" Jake decided to go behind my back and let his sister-in-law and her 4 kids live with us because his brother is moving to another state for work, even though I explicitly told him not to. Wait, is this the same sister-in-law that mocked you for being infertile? The one and only. And why can't she take care of her own kids? Because they're reckless. Last time they were over, they destroyed about $2,000 worth of things. You can see why I don't want any of them in my house. Holy crap, yeah. So what are you doing about it? Well, I snooped through Jake's phone and found out that he plans to give my sister-in-law my room as a punishment for not willing to help out. What the hell? So I was thinking that I would take everything out from the room and the house because I literally bought everything in it to begin with, and I'll keep it in a storage room. I love that thought process, but what about you? Yeah, that's what I was calling to ask about. Do you think I could stay with you until I get back on my feet? It might take a few months. Are you kidding me? Of course you can. We get to have sleepovers for a long time. Hell yeah. You can come over. Just let me know the time and date and I'll help you bring your stuff over. You're an angel. I felt more than ready to teach Jake a lesson. I knew this was technically the end of the marriage because I didn't want to be with someone who was so selfish that they failed to at least consider their partner's feelings. I spent the rest of the 2 weeks discreetly packing away my things and starting the filing procedures for divorce. At some point, except for the big and most commonly used furniture, the rest of it was slowly transported away during Jake's working hours. Thankfully, he was too caught up in his own thoughts to even notice the big differences in the house. A lot of my things were gone to Fia's place too, and he never noticed. My anxiety was high during those 2 weeks because I really wanted my plan to work out well, but also because I wanted to make as clean of an exit as possible. Once the 2 weeks were up, I knew that Jake would call me that day from work and ask me to clean out my room for Paula. So I took a day off work to get the final transporting of the furniture out. I took our couches and mantles and even all the bed frames. Jake would be left with the few things he had when we rented this apartment. Right as the movers had taken the things away and I sat in my car with the rest of my things to go to Fia's place, I got a call from Jake. Hello? Yes, it's me. What happened? Is everything okay? I need you to vacate your room. Paula and the kids are coming over. I thought we discussed that it wouldn't be happening. It's happening because I said so. Get on with the plan. And what about the kids? Where will they sleep? They'd have the guest bedroom to share. They're all young enough for that. And you have your room, but I won't have mine? No, because this is your lesson for refusing to help our family. You are a piece of work, truly. You know what? Don't worry. I knew about your plan, so I vacated my entire room, along with all of my belongings in the house. Why did you remove all your belongings? Because I said so. Get on with the plan. Goodbye. It felt amazing to say that to him, but even more than that, I was excited to hear his reaction to the whole thing. Before I left, I also made sure to leave him the divorce papers on the kitchen island because that was where he would first go after work to grab a cold drink. He was going to experience his shock in waves, and I was ready for that. I made my drive over to Fia's and we greeted each other in excitement. We quickly unloaded all my things and got to arranging the room she had given me in a basic manner. We tried to make it as homely as possible just so I was comfortable enough until I had enough time to fully unpack. Once we were done, we sat down to chat for a little while about how I was feeling and what I was going to do further on. However, all throughout that time, I couldn't help but constantly anxiously glance at my watch to check if Jake was done with work and on his way home. He did take longer than usual to get back home that day, but I figured that was probably because he was picking up Paula and the kids. But I knew he had reached home when I got a call from him. I initially ignored it just to stoke the fire a little, but I ended up giving in and picking up after the 5th call from him. What do you want, Jake? You took everything out of the house? Didn't I say that I vacated all of my things from the house? Yes, but that was our furniture and utensils. You can't just take them all away. Why can't I? I paid for them all, didn't I? Even after I repeatedly asked you to start buying things for the house, you never did, so I took away everything. What will Paula and the kids do? Not my problem. I told you to not let them come over, but you didn't listen. Instead, you went behind my back and disrespected me. You're cruel. No, Jake, you're the one that's cruel. I gave you my boundary and you violated it. You know what your sister-in-law and her kids did that last time, and you still invited them over. I would have been okay with you going over to stay there, but you insisted on them staying with us. So have it your way then. Oh, get over it, Jenny. It wasn't even that bad. Yeah, and you can get over me taking away everything that belongs to me too. It's not that bad. Also, I don't know if you saw it, but I've left your divorce papers on the kitchen island. You either sign it peacefully or you contact me through your lawyer. Goodbye. I hung up on him then, and he kept spamming me with calls after. I just put my phone on Do Not Disturb and continued to relax with fear. All the anxiety in my body left after that phone call was done. I had nothing else to worry about. If Jake did decide to contest the divorce, I would still be safe because we signed prenups. And all the furniture I bought was bought using my individual money and not money from our joint accounts. Jake did end up contesting the divorce, but like I said, I was fine. I don't exactly know about what happened to Jake and Paula and her kids, but from the long rant text that Paula sent me, I'm guessing that they had to drive back to her place that night, and that really upset the kids because they were looking forward to staying at my place. She also told me that since I took away the bed frames, Jake went to live at their place until the new one came, and since they didn't have any spare rooms or beds, he had to sleep on the couch. She kept telling me that I should be ashamed of myself for putting people in need through harder times. A part of me did feel bad for finding that situation funny. Who were the people in need? It was definitely not her. I knew she was just trying to mooch off her responsibilities onto us. As for Jake, he played a stupid game and now he won his stupid prize. It's been about 8 months since all of this happened, and I can happily say that the quality of my life has improved a lot. Living with fear has been amazing, and in fact, we were even discussing moving in together. That's about it for now. Thanks for listening.